Before we start the tutorial, I'm quickly going to go over my settings. No, my settings are extremely weird. Don't copy everything unless you actually need to. The biggest change I've made is putting my left and right hooks into mouse 1 and mouse 2. The reason I do this is actually pretty important. Normally, your hooks are on Q and E, which means you're constantly using the same fingers you need for your movement keys. With my hooks on mouse 1 and mouse 2, my left hand is completely free to use WASD while I'm double grappling. I recommend experimenting with your settings and changing them depending on what you need. You don't need to use mine exactly. I also recommend maxing out your FOB. ODM gear movement is extremely fast, so being able to see more helps you a lot. Alright, let's go over the actual basics of ODM gear movement. You have two hooks, left and right. They basically serve the same purpose, but generally your right hook is more useful when moving to the right and your left hook when moving left. Once you've hooked onto something, hold space to activate your boost. This is where Bencher's ODM gear movement starts getting interesting. Unlike a lot of AOT games, your hooks don't just pull you toward whatever you're grappled onto. They actually have swinging physics. That means getting momentum isn't about holding boost. You need to understand where you're hooking and how you're moving around that hook. Also, your boost isn't infinite. If you hold it constantly, eventually you're going to run out. Now, while you're hooked and boosting, you can control the direction your character moves using WASD. Space plus W sends you upward. I'm starting with this one because it's probably the biggest mistake I see beginners make. Do not hold W constantly while using ODM gear. A lot of new players assume W means go forward, so they hold it the entire time they're grappling. It doesn't. Holding W while boosting pushes you upward, which can completely mess up your trajectory and cause you to miss where you're trying to go. Space plus S does the opposite and sends you downward. A and D let you influence your movement left and right. But here's the really important one. If you don't hold any movement keys and simply grapple plus boost, you go forward. How much you're pulled forward also depends on how many hooks you're using. With one hook, you'll get pulled toward that point normally, but if you double hook a wall and boost without holding a movement key, you get thrown forward much harder. Understanding this is basically the foundation for everything we're going to do later. Now that you understand the basic controls, let's go over the actual movement skills. Currently, there are 4 that we're going to care about: burst, back burst, Levi Spin, and reel-in. I'll start with the easiest and work our way up. Burst is exactly what it sounds like. You release a burst of gas and launch yourself forward. It's extremely useful, but it consumes quite a lot of gas, so don't spam it unnecessarily. Backburst is basically the same thing, except it launches you backward. Just hold S plus your burst keybind. Simple. Next is Levi Spin. Double tap your keybind while you're in the air, and you'll propel yourself forward while spinning your blades. My biggest advice for this move is, don't just randomly Levi Spin into Titans. Before you use it, line yourself up and imagine the path you're going to take through them. Once you start fighting groups of Titans, positioning becomes way more important than just spamming attacks. Finally, we have reel-in. This is probably the most underused movement ability in the game, while also being one of the most useful. It only has a 2-second cooldown, and when you activate it, you pull your hooks toward you and launch yourself in the direction they're pulling. But reel-in works a little weird. You might assume you'll get the most speed by reeling in while you're already moving toward your hooks. You don't. You actually get more speed if you reel in while moving away from your hooks. So at this point, you know pretty much everything you need to actually use the ODM gear. But knowing what each button does and actually being good at ODM gear are two completely different things. The first thing you need to learn is how to move without constantly relying on your hooks. There's actually a mechanic in Bencher called hook tension. If you use your hooks too much, eventually they'll become temporarily disabled. This means that constantly grappling can actually screw you over when you need your hooks the most. A good ODM player should be able to build momentum with their hooks, release them, and then use that momentum to continue moving without wasting gas or building unnecessary hook tension. Funnily enough, one of the best ways to do this is by using reel-in. Reel-in doesn't consume any gas, and because of how it works, you can use it to generate a lot of momentum without constantly boosting. You can hook onto something and use your fall to transition onto a swing, or you can use reel-in again to launch yourself upward and repeat the process. Learning when to simply let your character travel through the air instead of constantly grappling is going to save you both gas and hook tension, while still allowing you to maintain your momentum. Now let's talk about something that I think a lot of players don't really think about, when you're actually placing your hooks. Instead of just throwing both hooks at whatever you're trying to reach, you should actually think about where each hook is going to go and how it's going to affect your movement. Remember, when you have two hooks attached, both hooks are pulling your character at the same time. That means you can intentionally divide your hooks between two different points to control your trajectory. Let's say there's a Titan in front of me and it's moving around a lot. I could just double hook on its head and try to manually move myself around it. The problem is that both hooks are pulling me toward basically the exact same point, which makes it much easier to overshoot the Titan or forces me to constantly correct my movement. Instead, I could just put one hook toward its leg and another one toward its shoulder. Now I have one hook pulling me from below and another one pulling me from above. Because both hooks are pulling me at the same time, they'll naturally guide my character to somewhere between those 2 points, which is basically an ape. When you have two hooks attached, those two directions combine. So where you place your hooks can completely change your trajectory, even if you're trying to reach the same target. And this doesn't just apply to Titans. You can use the same idea when you're trying to move through gaps, around buildings, through forests, or basically anywhere you need more precise control. Start thinking, where should I place my hooks to get me where I want to go? You'll have way more control over your ODM gear. And finally, this part is pretty simple. Use everything you've learned together. Your hooks, burst, back burst, reeling, Levi Spin, and normal movement aren't separate systems. They are all different tools you can use to control your momentum and where you need to go. There's no exact combination I can give you that's going to work in every situation. That's the whole point of learning what each move actually does. Once you understand them individually, you can start deciding which one you need depending on the situation. If I'm being completely honest, this is the part that I can't teach you. You just have to play. Experiment with the ODM gear. Try different things, make mistakes, figure out what works for you. Eventually, you stop thinking about every individual button you're pressing. A beginner using ODM gear is constantly trying to create speed. But once you get better, you start learning how to control the speed you already have. And once you do that, that's when the ODM really opens up.
Come on, come on, come on.